whatever my tone is before the video starts, it always gets like warmly jilted by the 3, 2, 1, you live. Yeah, yeah, I'm live. We're live. We're living together. Bleh. Hi, my name is Elliot. And your name is? Thank you for saying it out loud. And if you didn't, I heard it. But it'd be really cool if you said it out loud. But it's weird for you to say it again. And so we'll just like do the rewind. Like, hi, my name is Elliot. And your name is? We're just stating obvious things. Yeah. It's really nice hearing your name. It's a gray, it's a gray day. I live in Toronto. It's raining just a little bit, but I imagine it's going to be off and on. Okay, I'm tempted for the tangent. Weather channels and meteorology is the biggest, like, floozy ever. Who needs to check the weather on TV when you can check the weather outside? But how do you know it's going to be later? When you get used to looking outside for the weather, you get good at being like, oh, it's probably going to rain later. Oh, it's probably going to be a good day. Because you get to know the weather. Not to mention your participation with it. That was my tangent. But I can tie everything, always, into what we really mean to talk about. And this, it holds like a tender place in my body, my heart, in my mind, in my brain, in my pains, in my hopes, in my appreciations. I want to talk a little bit about what we have labeled mental health, mental wellness. That's how I like to refer to it, at least mentally. And mental disorders. I'm going to use mental disorders more specifically because besides other people thinking whatever they're going to think when they hear that word or those words, but mental and disorder, they become one word really when used together. You can't control what other people are going to think. You can only offer. And you can't force anybody to take anything that they don't want to have, for better and for worse. But the disorder of being not unordered, unordered would be like a state of chaotic dynamism. Random seeming with potential for a perception of an order that could be, which in one way of understanding is just understanding. Disordered would be something that has to the perceiver an order, something established, and that has been altered so that it is no longer ordered. For better or for worse. We can like just start / go from there. Okay. To just give some perspective in case we haven't known each other that long. My whole life I have suffered from mental disorder. And for most of my life I did not know that. I was born pretty premature. And I'm in our discussion, I'm just going to like acknowledge, love, and put to the side my like soulful spiritual origins / reasons for everything. Because all is love. And that which is lovingly begotten is done for the best, and at the best, in ways that go beyond ourselves, because that's where we come from. To achieve one day something beyond that. More love, more love, more love. Always more love. Now, how one can go through all their life without knowing that they've got, in some cases, a pretty severe mental disorder is the realization that I'd like to try and create with this share. We look out into the world next to each other, and we describe what we see with the words we've created to represent them. The gray sky. I look out with my eyes, and you look out with your eyes. And we both agree that the sky is gray. But there is no guarantee, or really any reasonability, that my eyes and your eyes, just neurologically, cognitively, are seeing the same thing. We have these bloody parades over how things look. Fashion in all its manifestations as like an industry. That doesn't look good like that. That doesn't look this goes together. But blue to me is more like teal to you. And legit, actually, what's gray to me, and not in like a lacking, there's no such thing as lacking. There's no colorblind, isn't like, oh, everything is just the same. There's color there, but you're just not seeing it. Like devoid of, like watching a black and white movie. But like one of the yoga studios that I worked at, they had these gray mats, but people would call them brown. It's like, that's not brown. That's gray. And it was like minor. And I could kind of like, okay, I kind of see how this brown, I guess, or whatever, you know, like gray to brown. For instance. And I don't want to talk about this generally. I want to talk about this in respect to our times, to the world, to time itself, to the fabric of our shared collected reality. Because it's like just super fucking pertinent. And it matters less that this is shared to people that to help them relate to us. This is more like all my shares, but again, my motivation for especially sharing is so that we can create more avenues to relate to ourselves. The word hallucination. You're having a hallucination. This such and such makes you hallucinate. If you are seeing things that you didn't see before, and that others, it seems, doesn't, like, can't or don't see, you're not alone by a long shot. And it can be maddening. It's certainly scary. But more than that, more than those, there's something that feels more like finally, right? Like it's beyond your imagination of what you thought was like within the realm of your own possibility for your own perception. And somehow it doesn't jar you. It doesn't bother you. It's somehow easy and hard to describe because it's how do you describe color to the blind person? Better, how do you describe color to a deaf one? Is more like it. in all my research and study and just investment of other people's consciousness, it always stood out to me how in the insert like modern golden age or here or like advent age here of medicine, psychiatry, blah blah blah, lobotomies, where people were seeing things. If you saw things, they're seeing things that aren't there. You're hearing voices that aren't there. What that would be like. And what would it be coming from? Like, what could be there but not be there? It's always hard for me to empathically relate to. And in all my growth and healing and like spiritual divine experience living, it makes sense that it was hard to make sense of because it's unreasonable. If someone, anyone, says that they see things that you cannot see, hear things that you cannot hear, aren't they right? It doesn't even matter really the context of the I want to say occluded vision, but like the unshared vision, the unshared hallucination. We'll get to that. Maybe. It's more if I can hear something because my hearing is really good that you can't hear, but it's of something that you can reasonably place in our environment, do you doubt me? The proverbial me, the me that is you, and the you that is other, for the sake of gorgeous duality. I've worn glasses since I was a child. I'm wearing contacts right now, but I'm not always wearing contacts when you see me without my glasses. I spend a lot of time without my glasses, especially over the last few years, because one day soon, I will not need them. My eyesight has been improving because who knew you can improve any and every aspect of your body if you engage its like healing / strengthening mechanisms. Does that make sense? Doesn't that make more sense than you can't ... It's just the way it is ... Fuck that noise. So hard. No, we don't doubt those things. What is it? We have like 3 different cones, supposedly, of our eyes. I also, in my research and my studies, I probably know more about eyes than anyone else in the world. And I can say that honestly. I could, for certain, engage whoever is at that level of expertise in full knowledge and full awareness and bring things to the table that are otherwise unknown. At least as far as I can ascertain, in a generalized, like, manner with which like information is made to be available. I don't fucking know everyone and everything, and there are actually ways that you can know these things. But if I'm going to ask the question of the divine source, it's not going to be something as trivial as, I don't even care what was I talking about. You know what I mean? Yeah. But the cones in your eyes, there's 3, and they determine your ability to see colors. I'm just speaking because that's like the common knowledge. That's not how your eyes work. Your eyes are way more brilliant. Your eyes are probably the most complex aspect of your whole biological body. They start forming from, like, when your brain starts forming, it's what forms the brain, the rest of your nervous system, and by extension, the rest of your body, stems from that, like, fetal, I want to say plateau or junction. And like your eyes start forming pretty much right away. It's by no error that your eyeballs are here, and they kind of like orb outwards. Your eye sockets are here, situated like essentially wearing the brain, and your occipital lobe is in the back. It's not because it's like furthest away, but because there isn't a part of your brain that your eyes don't have access to. But going back to the colors, why was I mentioning the colors? Oh yeah, because there's a percentage of people that have the genetic predisposition, a small percentage. And I'm especially, again, like, it's all just bullshit. It's like statistics. Like, you can be anyone. You can have those 4 rods because they develop. Everything is developmental, and everything that's developmental is essentially rooted in consciousness, which is rooted in choice, in just accepting one's own truth and giving permission to be more, to be best imagined. You can't be what you can't imagine, but if you can imagine being bad at something, then you can imagine being good at something. And then both are achievable. How is not always like known, but everything is knowable. Yeah. So imagine having this 4th cone. This is the genetic predisposition person. I think it's 10. I don't know. I want to say this, I guess. Women tend to have it more than men, I think. But men are more likely to be colorblind as well. Which is just yin and yang. One's not better or worse. It's like, oh, like one gender is more like predisposed towards like spectrum differentiation, and the other is more predisposed towards like light intensity or amplitude detection. That seems pretty awesome. They probably make a good team. They should make babies. That's why we're so great. Because we're the babies. None of us aren't. All right. Oh, my foot and leg fell asleep, and I love it. You always, I've always loved it when a part of my body falls asleep. It's like, and then I was like, it was like, do it, push it, the fuck is that? But I wonder if my pins and needles is the same as your pins and needles. Or is pins and needles just a hallucination? Now, when we're hearing voices or seeing things that we didn't used to see, or that others clearly aren't seeing, that's kind of more obvious just to, as a differentiation as far as like how different people are seeing different things. And I'm going to come back to how we're treated and how inappropriate that is. But I want to touch on, because this is the way that my own mental disorder has evidenced itself in my whole life, is part of my healing. My body, it's like it's gotten lighter. Not from exercise, but I've gotten stronger. I have more energy. And again, we're keeping all like the fucking magic aside. But just the ability to say what I mean in a way that I feel like what I'm saying is what I mean. Growing up in school, in the world, in the workforce, saying when I say it's hard for me to get out of bed, or it's hard for me to go get somewhere, I had no idea. But the amount of energy that it has taken me most of my life to just move my body. It's like I was wearing like metal armor or weighted armor. Always. And clunky, so that I'd bump into things and movements wouldn't work the way that they thought they would. And clumsy. I'm just tired. It's hard for me to wake up. I don't want to. All those words, when said to one another, that's not an answer that is allowed to be as short as the question, how are you? Because one person's hard to get out of bed is not the same as another person's hard to get out of bed. One person's, I don't understand how to do that, is not the same as another person's, I don't understand how to do that. One person's pain is not the same as another person's pain. But everything is noble. And it takes accepting that always, whoever's speaking is telling the truth. Unless they're lying. But lying is not a hallucination. It's hard for me to classify lying because it's so contrary to my to me. Speaking from like my place of mental disorder, keeping track of lies and to what end was always like, why? I love the truth because you don't have to remember it. Memory has like short-term, long-term memory, and how I remember things is always been something that was cognitively very affected. My memory is actually in some ways like redonkulous, but it's like a utility based, and it's even when I say like fine detail oriented, it's not what you might think fine detail is. In that, like, I don't know where I pulled that out of. Like, you know, like I can't just sit there and like and be like and know something that I know unless we're there and we're using it. The way I used to describe it, and the way maybe you've heard me describe it too, is I don't remember shit. And I need to understand it. And so everything that I do, and this is actually can help like be relatable. Everything I do is for the first time. Everything I do is I'm doing it for the first time. How do I make oatmeal? It's like, okay. It's not a routine as much as like a setup of ritual, but there's always a kind of questioning and using what I've learned about everything in my whole life to bake this oatmeal. Let's defer classifying the good way to do things and the bad way to do things. And you know what, bro? I just looked at the three, and I thought of you. I was like, I don't know. I thought of you, and then I looked, and then boom, boom, fuck. The mental, emotional, psychic sphere is so awesome when it comes to friendship, and because I had that lovely like little. I'm gonna take a moment to read what you said. My man. See, I don't know. I didn't coach you exactly. Boom. I don't know either. Exactly. Like, who knows? Who knows? It's less important to remember the exact way things were because we're all attempting always to convey meaning that is beyond grasp. It's And if we can listen like that, if we can relate to each other, that whatever anyone is always ever saying isn't actually what they mean, but the best attempt at it, then we can find a mutual target, a mutual goal, which is the truth of our meaning. There's no such thing as seeing something that isn't there. if you fucking see something, you're fucking seeing something. And if we can get over ourselves and each other, like the proverbial collective ourselves, then instead of being like, that person's crazy, we can instead be like, what are you seeing? How are you seeing it? And not how can I see it too, but what is this indicating towards another honest aspect of our shared reality? Because you know what? You see something that I don't see, but you tell me, and now I see it too. Everything is knowable, but not in a vacuum. I love using that expression because vacuums are so stupid. Not like the vroom vrooms. They're practical machinery. But just there's so much like hubbub. I was trying to make a Hubble joke about vacuums, like space is a vacuum. It's like, you're a vacuum. What do you mean space is a vacuum? The vacuum, like, no, I'm not even going there. That's just like Elliot being random Elliot. I'm going to kind of, I guess, round out, move towards conclusion with equal importance. It's like, because like, holy fuck, who of us haven't felt this? Like in relationship, it's like, I feel this way. Why do you feel that way? I mean, that's like, I wish I was asked that more often than not, but it's why? Did you just ask me why? All right, let's try. What that actually reminds me to feel, and it'll take us into like down in like interesting rabbit hole for our inquiry, is the I don't know. Because if everything is knowable, what is I don't know? I don't know is allowed to mean in my own like use of it, I don't know yet. So everything is knowable, but I don't know, like I don't know anything yet. Everything's knowable, but I certainly don't know everything yet. And for me to say that there will be one day that I don't know everything, like how do I know that? I can imagine being like, I don't know, a ball of energy that knows everything but does nothing. You know what I mean? Like I don't know how it works, but like I can imagine. So I don't know everything yet, and maybe I never will. Maybe I will. I certainly don't give a fuck. As long as I'm happy with friends and allowed to love what I love the way that I want to love it. Like growingly, not insistently or arrogantly, not in a vacuum. Vroom. I know cars make vrooms. Brooms make vacuums make. I've always been really sensitive to sound, but that's again part of my disorder that I've been ordering. I want to talk about emotions, but that reminds me of autism. There's no such thing as autism. There's only as much thing as autism as there is I have brown hair and you have blonde hair. Yes, in that case, there is such thing as autism. But if we are talking about difference, then couldn't we find that in every way? In fact, couldn't we enlarge in? I don't know, it's just funny to me. Like en, large, n, like there's that double n, and large n. I don't know. Not funny. I don't know, maybe, I don't know. Yes, 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 and more, Dave. I'm gonna actually say that because I know that sometimes or often when I'm listening to friends broadcast, whatever, I'm not always watching. I'm like listening more. So I, as in IYE, the I, don't know because the eyes are there to see. Brain does the translations to attempt to know, but brain can't see if it is to know. Divine mind is synesthesia of all five perceptions, plus more revealed. Oh, Dave, you and I are like one with like our style of like writing. Uh, because who writes the way that they speak? You can, but there's a way, prose, poetry, where more is said by the way things look in the written word and the way that they can feel in your mind than they sound when they try and roll off a tongue. But what do I know? Back to the rounding out of the conclusions. I have to speak from personal experience. When I say that I feel abused, feel unheard, feel like how you're treating me hurts me. No one could say that and ever be wrong. Like seeing something that isn't there. You can't feel something that isn't there. And like all perception, confusion arises from a lack of understanding. But when we prescribe false understanding, parading as truth, then poor souls are left with no recourse. Because I see something that isn't there, says the doctor, says the good doctor. And his prescription is that I'm crazy. Which just means out of control, broken, not right, apt to do something dangerous. What is crazy if just a word to describe? Like a social pariahhood or an attempt at social exile. But then I'll kind of move towards closing with this hopefully helpful piece of what's worked for me. You are loved. Don't believe me. Challenge it. Find it. And if you can't find it, imagine that if you can't find it, but you can feel something that is missing, there is nothing in existence that is ever lost that won't be found. We do in time and existence whatever forgetting means, but ultimately things do disappear. But disappeared things aren't lost. Lost means something or someone is looking for it. And if you feel something is lost, is missing, and can't find it, just imagine that there's a whole other floor underneath the basement that you've searched a million times over. Or that there's a ladder that goes out of the attic that activates a room that was invisible except for when you step foot in it. And that's where your lost thing is. Speaking a little bit more usefully or pragmatically, if you see things that scare the shit out of you, see things that alarm you, that bother you, that don't make sense to you, hear things, anything like along those lines, just keep going to find how it's a confusion about the universe trying to say I love you, or some other similar truth. If you don't see something, or if you see something that if you think you see something but you're like there's nothing there, then you're right. But that doesn't mean there's nothing there. That just means that you don't see something. So use that. In my experience, it's like there are layers of perception and reality, and it's like paying attention to your movie and like not paying attention to the commercials. Pay attention to where you see, hear, feel the truth. And that which does not feel like the truth, that feels like distraction, that feels like trying to move you in a direction that does not feel like your direction, then don't look. Don't see, don't hear. Not the same as ignoring, because you cannot not look if you ignore. Not looking is the same thing as looking. It's just choosing where, the direction in which you're seeing. When I'm looking here, I'm not looking. And I'm trying to not ignore what's behind me, because I can totally do that. But I'm working on opening my perception to be aware of all of it and ignore none of it. Because who knows what's there trying to love me? I've been up against frightening occasions, which in hindsight were really cool, because I've never felt those ways before, and they were realer than anything that I've ever experienced. But in my truth, they were always ever just love, totally confused by my own thinking, which actually made total sense from where I was, and thus how it brought me here. So just because you see something doesn't mean you need to look at it. Just because you hear something doesn't mean you need to listen to it. What's worked for me, like, I don't really hear voices inside my head, but what does that mean? I hear my own voice inside my head. And now you might say, so do I, but what I hear as my own voice inside my head might actually be what you would call something else, right? I've always thought that I could see things in my mind. I read books, like I imagine, I have memory, and then I started seeing things in my mind. And I was like, whoa, what the fuck is that? That's a thing? But if I say I see things in my mind, you're like, so do I. Like, but do you? Like, yeah. It's like, I used to say yes too. So how do I know the voices inside my head actually hasn't been just my soul, my higher self, the whole time? How do you know that for yourself? And then how do you know that there aren't like aspects of reality that are, you're like, it's like someone in the room that won't shut the fuck up. And you're like, wait, just like, shut the fuck up. I can see you in the room, but instead of it being a room, it's your mind, and it's not your voice. It's not you. And they won't shut the fuck up. How do you know? How do you know what's you and what's not you? Everything is knowable. But we have to believe in ourselves and choose to follow that which feels good. And although we've been tried to shift from or conditioned to like is that like pleasure seeking, we are nothing but, we just want to feel good. It's like, no, but that is a great way of describing what we all deserve. I want to feel bad sometimes. It's like, yeah, but I don't really need to try it that. And I mean that even in utopia. Because in the edge of like trying to become more is what we're not yet, but we can imagine. And That's feel bad enough for me. So see, choose, hear, choose, and make space for yourself, as well as everyone else, just the way that you do. Uh, because none of us know how any of each other feels. How are you? I'm good. Sees, thinks, unless we sit down, walk together, play together, live alongside each other, and allow that knowing to unfold, to become mutually known. Because when I say that the sky is gray, and you say that the sky is gray, but every day we go outside and we give the sky a color, and days turn into a lifetime, then my gray might not be the same as your gray. But I know damn right that what you mean by gray is what I mean by gray. Because we share all the same names for all the same experiences of color that we have at the same time. And that is as good as it can be. I'm with you. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for joining because connection is the most important thing. How we connect, we'll get there. And that's always a process. But that's what we've been talking about. And all that is sharing and giving a fuck about the gifts. Which is to say, when we don't understand each other, instead of that being a failing, let it be reasonable and the point of engagement. It's like, of course I don't know what the fuck you mean. But love is figuring out how we can have the exact same meaning about the same experience that we created together. Imagine a world like that. And that's the world that we'll be meeting. I love you. I think you're fucking wicked. Obviously. Yo. Yeah, and all I would keep wanting to say is like, thank you for being you, for sharing with me, for being you, for being so awesome, for loving everything the way that you love everything. Thank you for choosing. I miss you. end stream, well, it's really just seeing, because the stream will keep streaming. And thanks to you for a little bit longer, my smile will keep beaming. Have a lovely day and night and everything that's to come before us. Namaste. And super great to connect in this way, Dave. One of my fondest memories of streaming is some of the back and forth that we've had for no other reason except that exact reason, which is the best reason. And in closing, thank you for all the comments. There's not a single one that hasn't made my heart feel warm in a way that I pray for. And coming to peace with my different way of relating to technology. In some ways it's like ridiculous, and in other ways it's like, texting. But take this from me, and maybe take this from others. Not replying doesn't mean not reading, and not replying doesn't mean not loving. Because who said that that's the way that love needs to be conveyed? Hopefully you feel all the different ways that are more accessible to me. For you to know without a doubt that I thank you and I love you, and you make my day. Okay, bye, end stream, namaste. Have a great everything. Until again and again. Peace.